Hi, I'm Anna Yudin. I'm an author and a doctor of clinical psychology, and today I want to talk about how I lengthened my social battery as an introvert. So let's get into it. First of all, in order to understand what I'm talking about when I refer to my social battery as an introvert, we have to understand the difference between how introverts and extroverts recharge their energy. So both introverts and extroverts have a reservoir of energy that periodically they need to refill. The way in which they differ is that introverts refill that energy by spending time alone, by retreating into themselves, whereas extroverts refill their energy in exactly the opposite way, by spending time with people. That is what gives them more energy. So in a way, introverts and extroverts are kind of at odds because their needs are directly contradicting each other. It's only when introverts learn to have a larger social battery and when extroverts learn to spend some time with themselves that we can truly be compatible with each other and give each other what we need and sort of negotiate and compromise. So what I mean by social battery is that introverts have essentially a reservoir of how long they're able to power through social interactions before they start to get really tired and basically their battery dies. Just like with a phone, like you can look up in your phone what your battery health is. If your phone battery is healthy, closer to 100%, then that means it can last longer. Whereas if your battery is closer to, let's say, 85% or even lower, then your battery health is not as great. It could mean that you need a new battery for your phone. It's exactly the same with introverts too. Somebody that has a social battery with good health can go for longer in these interactions, whereas somebody with a lower battery health can only last maybe a couple hours in social interactions before they start to get really tired. So for me, I used to have a social battery that was only 2 hours long. I remember 2 years ago distinctly when I told my friend this. I told her that, as an introvert, I can only really last 2 hours in a social interaction before I kind of feel like I need to get out of here. So how that would look for me is I would start to retreat into myself. I would start to get more quiet. People would sometimes ask me, hey, are you okay? Not as talkative, not as enthusiastic when people are talking to me. Less attentive, not listening as well. In my own head, I was plotting my nearest escape. And then when you're nearing late stage battery death, when, your battery is about to die. For me, that looks like, honestly, I would start to get annoyed with people. I would start to not want to hear anything that they wanted to say. I would start to send not so subtle signs that I wanted out of the interaction, like starting to yawn or starting to say, it's getting late, or I have to get up tomorrow. This is very different from how things look for me now, today. I honestly can't remember the last time my social battery died. I can definitely go longer than 2 hours in a social interaction. Lately, I've been having some really long social events that lasted like all day long, and I was fine. I could have kept going. I could probably at this point have my social battery last for days. After a few days, I'd probably feel like I kind of need some alone time. But to go from 2 hours to a few days, I greatly improved my social battery health. So how did this happen? The first thing that I think happened that I wouldn't necessarily recommend is I moved to a place where I don't know a lot of people, and so I didn't have a lot of options for social interaction, and I started to crave it. And so when I would have those social interactions, I completely changed the way that I go into them. I didn't take them for granted anymore, and these are some of the changes that I made. Number one is I started to get genuinely interested in connecting with other people. I didn't have a lot of friends in high school, and I think a lot of the reason for that is I wasn't a good conversationalist, and I wasn't a good conversationalist because I just didn't care about teenage topics. I cared about more big world things, adult things. I didn't want to talk about like stupid shit, inside jokes about McDonald's or the classmate that likes to eat paper during math class. It just didn't interest me. I didn't find it fun. I didn't find it funny. And now as an adult, surrounded with other adults, I find people a lot more interesting. I can see who they are as a person, their strengths, their weaknesses, and I want to bond with them and I want to gain intimacy. I want to learn about certain aspects of their life. I recently read a book, I believe it was The Magic of Thinking Big, and in that book, the author talks about how if you're feeling not enthusiastic about a certain subject, learn more about it. And the more you learn about it, the more enthusiastic you'll be. The same is true for people. If you feel not very enthusiastic about somebody, then learn more about them and they will become more fascinating to you. The more you learn about them, the more you'll want to learn. Because human beings are so complex, they're so intricate, we're so interesting. Somebody on the surface might not seem that deep, might not seem like there's much there under the surface, But once you get digging a little, I think you'll find that there's a lot to value there. And this also relates to the next change that I made to increase my social battery, which was to foster a sense of goodwill towards people. The best way to gain charisma, to gain connection with people, is to genuinely feel goodwill towards them. Let me give you some examples of some of the good, positive, warm feelings that I have towards people that I've interacted with recently. There's one person that I think is a really great conversationalist, is always very warm to people. There's never an opportunity for like an awkward pause because this person genuinely has such an interest in other people, wants to get to know about them, has no shortage of things they want to talk about, and it's just like a lively breath of fresh air. Another person that I don't know so well, I noticed a few traits that I really liked about this person. Specifically, they really value family and they really want a close-knit family, not only with their side of the family, but also with their in-laws and with the community and culture that they've joined. And they make a lot of efforts to embed themselves and their spouse into this new culture and to have a sense of community. So that's something that I really enjoy. Another person that I know is just extremely warm, just like the most accepting person, will never judge you. Even for somebody that's being a little outrageous, they will always just see the best in people. They're gentle, they don't reprimand people. You can just feel so comfortable around them. Another person is not super talkative, but you can just tell that they're very sentimental and they do a lot of things for people through acts of service, through fixing things that other people can't fix themselves. That's sort of how they show their care. And they do also really express love and affection for people. So if you're hearing this already, I'm giving you like a little bit of sense of what these people's positive traits are. And you might be hearing it and thinking, well, I can also see kind of the shadow side of these. I can see, the way in which their strengths might also be weaknesses. And that's absolutely true. And we could sit here and we could talk about these people's weaknesses. But how would that help anybody? Because if you're so cynical in your outlook of people, if you only focus on their weaknesses, then you're not going to be able to bond with them because you don't genuinely feel goodwill towards them. You have to direct your attention towards the positive traits that people hold, and that will make you feel more warmly towards them, and in turn, it'll make you behave more warmly towards them, and that in turn will build a connection that will make it easier for you to be around them, will make them feel safer and therefore less exhausting because you don't have to wear all these different layers of masks around them. And if there's somebody that you genuinely don't see anything positive about, that genuinely you can't stand or they can't stand you, then why be around them, man? Life's too short for that. And when you naturally do this, when you start to increase your level of goodwill towards people, you naturally start to be in a state of flow while socializing. So I've spoken about being in a state of flow while you're doing professional things and the importance of having a job where you're constantly in a state of flow. But it's also really important in social interactions too, or else you're going to tap out. If you see social interactions as a means to an end, if you see social interactions as just like an obligation that you have to do because you're expected to, but you don't really enjoy it. If you see social interactions as a performance, then you're gonna tap out. You need to genuinely immerse yourself in the experience of socializing, and then time will just fly right by because that's the essence of what flow is. Flow is when you're so deeply embedded in an experience that you become at one with the activity. You cease to exist, you become the activity, and time also disappears. You don't know how fast time is passing by because you are completely immersed in the activity. So be fully present. Put your phone away. Treat this activity as your top priority for however long it goes on. Give it your full attention. Take your time. Don't try to rush out as soon as possible. Just kind of go with the flow. Go with wherever the activity takes you. Say yes to the universe. What being in a state of flow also means while you're socializing is don't try to numb the experience or don't try to self-medicate. That means don't drink or eat or whatever more than you need to during a social interaction just because you're nervous. Drink and eat intuitively. Truly, this is an art that I've mastered so much by this point in my life. Even if somebody were trying to get me to drink or take shots or something, let's go, more drinks. If I feel like I'm kind of done, which honestly sometimes happens even after one drink, there is nothing that person could say that would convince me to keep going. I've come to a place where I no longer need to rely on anything to make it through these social interactions. I'm kind of just raw dogging it. Maybe I'll have a drink or two because I feel like it, but I'm constantly checking in with my body and asking it, what do you feel like you need in this moment? And I'm not using that as a way to make the experience more tolerable, because I don't need to make the experience more tolerable anymore. It's already very tolerable because I'm already in the flow. So don't do things that you think are going to make the interaction easier on you. Really raw dog the experience. And lastly, something that really helped me change the way I charge my social battery is I changed my definition of rest. I used to think that the way that I need to rest after a long social interaction is to literally just stay at home and watch TV every evening for like a week straight. And that was not healthy. Because if you need a week of that after every single social interaction, you are going to feel depleted often. You should be doing a lot of things throughout the week, not just sitting comatose in front of a TV. Watching TV is a very passive activity. And while yes, I do really enjoy it, when you're in a state of passivity for too long, bad stuff can crop up. I used to get very anxious during the evenings, I think in large part because of that. I haven't had an instance of illness anxiety or really any kind of big anxiety in months because I no longer do that. I read instead of watching TV in the evenings now. I recently made a video in which I talked about how an object at rest will remain at rest, an object in motion will remain in motion. You're not going to be able to feel energized by just doing nothing. You need to redefine the way that you recharge your social battery to be active. Recharge by doing still active things, not by doing passive things. Instead of just sitting at home and watching TV or just dawdling in bed, try reading, try going out for a nice meal, try hiking or going for a walk, go to the sauna, clean your apartment, maybe even traveling, although that can be pretty exhausting. If you start to redefine rest as something that is still active, then when you're socializing, it's not going to feel as draining anymore because you're going to feel like, well, this is just play. This is just a form of rest for me. So I don't need to go home and spend a week being a hermit because this in and of itself was pretty restful. So that mindset shift really helped me. As always, if you're looking for a deeper dive into all things relationships, the Connection course is a really good place to find that. Have over 4 hours worth of lessons in there. And make sure to use the code Memorial Day Sale from now until Memorial Day if you want 20% off. What do you think about this topic? Do you have a social battery? How does that look for you if you're an extrovert? Can you relate to what I'm saying if you're an introvert? I'll see you soon and take care.